Hey everyone. So we just got done recording an episode about quality matches, and we had both Chris Scott, who you probably haven't seen in quite a while, and we had Mike Pannone on, and we just kind of talked about what we consider quality matches. Just had a big roundtable discussion. So Frank, what's your assessment?
So we talked about local matches and we talked about major matches. And they're different ball games, but what's important is that if you're getting into competitive shooting, finding good locals is going to lead you to good majors, but it's also going to prepare you to perform well in them. And I think we also did a great job of breaking down matches across the country in a variety of different disciplines. We did USPSA as well, three gun, and pretty sure there's a few other disciplines that made it in there. So lots of information regardless of what part of the country you're from. And I hope you guys enjoy it.
And I'm going to go ahead and throw a couple shameless plugs in there since this episode was about quality matches. So this today, Friday, at 8 p.m. is going to be opening registration for three man three gun up at Topton, Pennsylvania. That's one of my favorite three gun matches to shoot because it's a team match and it's just real good, fast, stand and deliver match. If you want to kind of get a picture of what it's all about, we do have an episode that is about three man three gun specifically. If I had the episode number here, I would tell you, but that's okay. You could just scroll through and find it. And then the other match that's going to be opening up registration on Saturday evening is going to be the Zoo City Armory Battle for the South. Last year was the first annual. I think it caught everybody by surprise in terms of it being a first annual and people just absolutely loving it. I speak about Jason Byerly and the Zoo City crew all the time on here, and there's a reason. It's a good match. So that's going to be that opens up on Saturday evening. So again, I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you take in a lot of good information and let us know what you think.
Give me a nod when you're ready. Shooters ready. Stand by.
Hey everyone, this is Matt Gunlock from the 3GIQ podcast. I'm here with Frank Gow, my co-host, and also we have Chris Scott, our former OIC for, the Marine Corps shooting team. And he was also, before he left Weapons Training Battalion, he was part of, or before he left the Marine Corps, he was part of the Advanced Marksmanship Training Package, which we do plan on doing a future episode on what that is, the initiative that they started and drove into. But this episode, we're kind of going to be talking about finding quality matches within your area, whether you're stationed in California or if you're, not in the military, but you want to find quality matches in general. So that's what this discussion is going to be about. So I guess starting out, how would each person define a quality match? Frank, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I wrote down several areas, like criteria, and I'll just go down the list and we'll talk about each of them individually. But I would say at the very top is match administration. How easy is the match to find, sign up in, squad, pay? And how does the match director ensure that there's a good match flow, like not having squads stack up on top of each other? How good is the stage design? Are they really simple stages that you could set up at your local range yourself? Or are you legitimately going there because that match director is putting together something special each and every time? What's the competitive level of the match? Are you going up against GMs? Are you going up against guys that are probably going to stomp you into the ground, but also going to show you something that you wouldn't necessarily get from going out and shooting with your buddies? And I guess the secondary question I would pose there is that does a high level competition in the match also tend to lend itself to the strength of the range officers that attend that match as well? Open question for you all. The match props, right? Some ranges have really good match props. I would say that Zoo City has a really good cadre of match props. Sir Walter had some really good stuff. I'm mostly talking about moving steel activators, that kind of stuff. That just it creates an extra dimension, and these are the things that you're likely to see if you go to a major match as well. Rules and scoring transparency. So there's some standardized rules, right? But sometimes there are some local matches that just make things up, and that does certain things to competitive equity, right? And scoring transparency. Like some guys like the live scoring, but is the match director just going to upload a JPEG of a paper score sheet after the match? Or are you actually going to get timely updates in practice score? And that matters, right? You kind of want to know where you stacked up. The price, right? And that varies per region and based on what you're getting. And then the last thing I'd say is match director personality. So we'll start by talking about match administration. Chris, thoughts on between what are some of the things that you'd see in a good match and some of the things that you'd see in a bad match.
Yeah, so I kind of just go through. I tried to write down like what good matches I've been to, why did I like those. And so one of the first ones, and I think almost every match is doing this, there's like I can really only think of one 3-gun match that's holding out, is practice score registration. If it's not on practice score, we're not in the 90s anymore. I think Rocky Mountain 3-gun's the only one that they're not doing practice score registration. You have to like mail in a check, which is hilarious, but it's a good match, so people will still go to it. Self-swatting with clear communication. Like I've been to a match before where did self-swatting, picked the squad. I was like the lone guy that nobody knew, and then they moved me like the day of the match because I wasn't friends with other people or something, and they needed to move stuff around, which I get, but just clear communication from the match director if they need to make any changes for match flow as far as squatting goes or combined squads. Online payment through practice score. I know that they get charged a fee for using Stripe, I believe it is.
It's only like $1.25 or something. It's nothing crazy though.
Okay, that's not bad at all then. Yeah, I've never set up the payment. I just know some don't allow you to pay through practice score. So just be able to pay through practice score after match approval. And then the kind of going into the match more, like how it goes, like match flow. I'd say half-day format, unless you're at some crazy range facility that you can't get between stages in a timely manner, then I can understand the on-off format. But even shooting Memorial 3-gun, things were fairly spread out there, but they had you shoot in zones. So you could still facilitate a half-day format. I don't really see a lot of arguments for doing a full day on-off format for a match. Another thing that I this kind of goes with it, but like match directors factoring in the travel time between the different stages. So if they're sticking to like a hard schedule where you have to be at this stage at this time, but you're driving a couple miles or something, factor that in. And then, I mean, I can kind of go into stage design here a little bit.
We'll stick with
point you want it.
Yeah, we'll stick with match administration for the time being. That point you brought up about travel time between stages, you guys shot a lot of 3-gun, obviously had. I think the Clinton House is one example, Matt. You've talked about that several times. But I would just say, even like some of the USPSA majors, the chrono is like tucked away in some random part of the woods, so you gotta go hunt that down. But also, like if you're at one end of the range and walking all the way to the other end of the range, it does take a while. And Mike is we'll spin him up real quick. Or
yeah.
So while we're waiting for Mike to spin up, what some bad registration software that I've seen specifically.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, dude. Sorry, I totally screwed the time up.
It's all good, man.
Range blazing.
It's all good. We've already started recording, but no, we're literally at the beginning. We're doing quality matches and everything.
Okay.
And so we're talking in the beginning, like, you know, what constitutes a good match.
Okay, so we're where are you on that? Because I definitely got some
Yeah.
comments for that.
So I came up with a list of criteria, Mike. I'll
Okay.
just go through real quick. We are talking right now about match administration. So how easy is it to sign up? How easy is it to squad? How do you pay? And the general match flow. What
Okay.
Chris talked about is like travel in between bays, like the match director factoring in how long it takes people to get from bay to bay. And then also being able to pay online was a pretty big thing.
Okay.
I guess
Okay.
I'll just Matt, you and I talked about paying online before this. So I understand the club wanting to keep more cash for itself, but I would also say that if it's easier for people to pay, more people will sign up. But also, if people have already paid, they're less likely to just back out on a whim. The day of a match, if I haven't paid my $25 to $30, it's easy for me to just not show up if the weather's bad, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
But if you want to jump right in, Mike, so good and bad practices in terms of match administration.
I think the squatting always turns out to be kind of an issue because people want to squat with their buddies and all that. So that's a bit of it. And then how they coordinate it. When I was still living out in Tucson, I'd go to Rio and shoot. And it's a big match. I mean, there's a lot of people that show up, and it's a big. I mean, Rio's kind of the shooting mecca, and you end up with like we had 90-minute waits for stages. Like you'd shoot a stage, and then you wait 90 minutes for the next stage. And I'm like, it was
that's bad.
It was brutal, dude. It was you'd start in the morning and you'd be there for 6 or 7 hours. It was garbage. I just stopped shooting it. It's just too much. And I think that's a range administration. They're maximizing the cash flow. They're just packing as many people. Hey, we can get 30 people a stage. Well, if you have one stage, you got a classifier that's 12 rounds, and then the next stage is a field stage that's 32 rounds with steel. So you got makeup shots on it now, and it takes forever to reset the apparatus. Excuse me, and all that. Now all of a sudden, you don't have 34 people per stage. You have like 58 people at one stage all the time, and it like binds up. So there was a bunch of those that were. The matches weren't balanced.
Yeah.
The stages, some stages were really long and complicated, and they'd be choke points, and everybody would end up there. If you knew the match, you started at that stage and you were done in 3 hours. If you didn't know and started anywhere else, you were there for 6 hours. So it's like it was a little harsh, I thought, on the range administration side of it. I mean, that they should have thought it up better and balanced the stages. You'd have some short stages that weren't classifiers that were 19 rounds and 7 seconds, and you're like, okay, everybody burns through all the short stages and then ends up waiting in line for the big one. So I think it's kind of the big picture part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I agree with everything there. And match flow to me is extremely important. Like that whole, waiting an hour and a half for, just to get on a stage, that's boo-boo on the match director itself. And I think that also shows a level of incompetence on the match directors who allow that to happen. I think Chris and I have ran Marine Corps marksmanship competitions ourselves, and we always take time considerations in between from stage to stage, extremely important. And one thing I love about Jason Byerly, like whenever he runs Memorial 3-gun or Battle for the South, Fall Brawl, or even helping J.K. Khan with the Duskin match, they look at the complexity of the stage, how long it's going to take to get each shooter through. They come up, and a common formula that you can go by, that any match director can go by, is, okay, I need to safely assume, and I do it whenever I factor things in, like if it's going to be a local match, if I'm going to run a match, and I haven't ran many matches myself, but I look at, okay, if I have 10 people on the stage, I can reasonably give each shooter 6 minutes, from the time they're getting ready to the time they're on the line shooting, and the time that it takes to reset that stage at 6 minutes. And that's an overestimation. But
yeah,
now each squad is going to take 1 hour on that stage. And if you have to increase it, okay, well, how complex can I keep this stage going? And how complex can I make it? If I'm going to do a long range stage, am I going to make a plethora of other stuff after that long range, or am I going to make the focus just that long range? And then am I going to transition into some easy shotgun, easy pistol? That way you're still running through 3-gun, and then everybody runs through and there's not a backup. And then you also have to factor in, complexity for the newer shooters. You have to factor in, time. What's the part time going to be? Every stage, your typical base stages may be a little bit different than your long range stage, but that long range stage, there's no reset. So it's just, how much is that match director taking all those considerations? And, this goes hand in hand with everything from a local match to a major match. And I think we're in a day and age now, and I'll say when the fall of 3-gun nation happened, a lot of people were like, oh, well, I live in this area. I have access to this range. So I'm just going to start hosting my own major. And people started, getting this idea that I don't have to travel for matches anymore. But the thing is that the match quality didn't get better. And I think Chris and I saw this a lot whenever we were shooting on the team. There were matches that we went to that we were really hoping to be good. And some of them did not hit the mark. And it turned into, you have your major matches and then you have your local majors. And I'm not going to call any matches, but Chris and I went to a match last year where, I had a round go over my head because I was at a different part of the match. And I was just like, what the fuck?
Cool.
No, that wasn't. But so I just, those are some of the considerations I take into it.
I look at a thing I see too is complex. When on just a quick side note on the complexity of the stages, if you have apparatus set up, they have to be set up correctly so that they can be consistently triggered, and so you don't have reshoots and you're not calibrating steel. I've seen that. That's been a huge problem. Is there's a stage with steel that's not calibrated properly, and people are calling for calibration. That stops everything for 10 minutes right there for sure. It's like the whole flow's shot. So it's like, you don't just throw a match together. There actually is, a learning curve to that. If you're just starting from scratch, there's a lot of mistakes you got to make. And hopefully you can talk to people that have already made them and not make them yourself. But yeah, there's a lot of matches that are, that people think, oh, just like you said, just set up 4 stages or set up 6 stages and we're good. It's like, not so much.
Or, give your ROs the power to, calibrate and to check.
Yeah. ROs is a whole nother topic we're going to delve into.
Yeah, absolutely. That is further down the list. We're already kind of getting into stage design, but if I could add a couple more things, some bad registration practices that I've seen. Matt, personally, for the tactical games, I hated the fact that they use race entry. Yes. I thought that website was garbage, but they're now doing practice score.
Well, honestly, I think some of them, okay, so Jared Halbert is a 3-gunner by trade. He started out in 3-gun, but and I don't know how their makeup was, what he ran and what he didn't run. And so whenever they had that, they are now doing, I want to say they are doing.
I just signed up through Practice Score.
So they are doing things through Practice Score now, but I want to say the reason why they were doing race entry before is due to the fact that they had some long distance runners who was kind of in control. So it was basically, this is the program, the website we understand. So this is what we're going to use on their level. And I don't think they were fully, in tune with the practice score thing in the shooting community.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that. And also, if you show up and your match director is signing everyone up on a piece of paper, that's not, it can work. It can certainly work, but it's indicative of several things. There are better ways to do it, and that match director either thinks that they cannot learn that or is unwilling to learn those other ways of administering a match. And
more human error there too.
Yeah, so a lot of human error too. Like when they post a picture of a bunch of people's names and their scores at the end of the day, are you willing to take that as the gospel truth? And the last thing I'll add there is make your match easy to search in practice score as well. There's a lot of generic names and acronyms out there. And in the odd case that like I'm following the World Shoot right now. All I had to do was look up, like, I think it was Thailand or World Shoot or IPSC, and it popped right up. So having something distinguishable, I think, is pretty important.
That way, it also gives
Yeah.
people an ability to score hawk.
Exactly. Right. Yes, for the longest time, the tackle games was terrible about that. Like, it always took me forever to find those scores. But we can move into stage design, Matt.
Okay, yeah. So I'll go with. I'll start out with. You know, I've only been shooting competitively 8-9 years. For most people, they would consider me an OG. I don't consider myself an OG necessarily, but I've shot a lot of matches. Like when I started out, it was Tar Heel 3-gun, and essentially you were getting a major match in on a monthly basis, and they were very complex stages. You had 6 long range stages out of well, no, you had 4 long range stages and a 6-stage match. But now, kind of describing, now that I'm a little bit more seasoned, I take the Jason Byerly approach whenever I come up to a stage, and what am I getting myself into? How complex is it? And is there a flow to that specific stage? And the way Jason describes it is, if I'm doing a jungle run, I want there to be a very specific flow, almost like a dance. I want to be able to just continuously move, reload the shotgun, or just continue moving forward. And the only time you get out of step is when you fuck up. So there has to be some kind of flow. There has to be, some type of lateral movements. There's got to be some kind of gotcha targets in there as well. That way it's always keeping you thinking and moving.
Yeah, I agree with that. The way I do any stages that I come up to, I try to break them down into chunks. And I do this, and then I do that, and I do the next thing. Like, I break it down in chunks, especially when you get like memory stages and stuff like that, which get a little stupid at times. It really helps to do that. But there's always, like you said, if it's done correctly, there'll be a flow, but there'll be a catch me what target somewhere behind a barrel or something to force you to come out of that flow and then re-enter the flow again. And I think that's actually good. Shout out here, not this year because I effed it up, but the year before when I shot at PCSL, there were a couple stages like that where there's a really distinct flow, but there's one target that makes you depart that and then re-enter that. And I think that's good, but it should be logical. And it shouldn't be overly ornate. Like I've done some memory stages in like at Rio that I know the guy that set them up, and it's like, you gotta be freaking Einstein. It's like you can shoot one target from here and 2 targets from here, but then one target. There's like 8 different shooting boxes for like 12 targets, and it's just like it's everything is obscured and behind barrels. I'm like, I get it, but I don't get it, because you're not testing marksmanship. None of the shots were hard. You're testing memory. You're testing someone's ability to memorize the stage, which I think that's not shooting. That's a freaking memory game. So, but on the stage design part, it should flow. You shouldn't have, I think, another thing too, because I saw it in Nationals, it was a while back. It's like 2017. There were a bunch of people that got DQ'd on a stage because they put like a 180 trap. They put a really, really, really bullshit 180-degree shot where you're standing at the front of a building, like you're getting ready to go into a facade, and if you step a little bit deeper, like you're right up against the doorway, and you shoot across, you broke the 180 theoretically. I thought it was complete crap, and I watched them DQ a guy from Canada who's a really good shooter, send him back home, and everybody was like, no, he didn't violate the 180. And it was a big fight, and that ties into the RO part, and it was like a big shit show. I think the 180 trap stuff is stupid. I think it's absolutely stupid and bullshit. You take it about 10 degrees off. If you break out of if you go if you're at 170, that should be as far as the targets go. You're going to 180, then it becomes subjective for an RO. And truthfully, a lot of the ROs that I've watched do not do that well a job when it comes to something that's that close, because they can't be everywhere. Now there's some just bad ROs, but most of them, it's really hard from the angles they're at, if it's right at the 180, to call a 180 or not, because it may look like it, but it wasn't, but it's only one perspective. So it's like those stage designs, to me, yeah, you want to make sure that people can control their gun, but why would you set a stage up with a 180 trap? I think it's stupid. That is absolutely freaking stupid. It serves no purpose on the marksmanship side. It becomes a subjective call. That and then on the like I shot out in Washington State for a long time, and you have guys set up matches, and it was a 3-yard hoserama, like a bank of 3 targets at 3 yards, and then a bank of 4 targets at 5 yards. And then I'm like, I just spent $9 in freaking ammo to shoot at 5 yards max. I think those ones are on the stage design side. They should be logical, they should be reasonable, and they should have some component skill, either requirement or emphasis at certain parts. Like, this is the precision part of the stage. This is the speeds part of the stage. Okay, we go from the speed to precision or precision to speed to see if you can change gears. There should be some sort of test to it, not just random targets thrown out and like, because that's what you want to do. And I've seen a lot of those on local matches.
Chris?
Yeah.
Things that I've seen on as far as that 180 track goes, and it's a little bit more, at least I've seen it more at USPSA matches, is that they will have their assistant RO stand right where the 180 trap is. So that way they know you break the 180 by pointing the pistol at them by going 181, which is ridiculous.
Yes.
Because they want to make sure you broke the 180 by putting themselves in the line of fire, essentially.
And Jeff, dude, here, just real quick on that, bro. Just real quick. That one in the Nationals, they didn't have the guy. One, if I were the assistant RO, I wouldn't have stood there. But his assistant was basically were 2 guys at 90 degrees, and the shooter was over here. So nobody could really tell. That was the problem with it. When like the only way you could tell is what you're saying. If he was standing over there, which nobody wants to do. And then it came down to the RO and the assistant RO. The assistant RO said, I didn't see anything. The RO said, yeah, you broke the 180. We called freaking the match director down. Every single person on the squad said he did not break the 180. And they said, tough luck. My RO says he broke the 180. You're out. So it's like, that's what I'm saying. When you do a 180 trap, you set that up for either one, an unsafe situation if you've got an assistant RO, or 2, some guy getting jacked who has to fly back to Canada, who it probably cost him $2,500 to come to the match. So it's like, that's why I look at that. It's kind of a pet peeve, because I watched the dude he was on my squad. He's a friend of mine, get jerked around and waste $2,500 because of a poor stage design and then rigid ROs.
I got to say, like, whenever that's the huge difference between 3-gun and USPSA. USPSA, they have, they do a lot of things right, but they do a lot of things wrong. And you definitely do have a lot of ROs that are, let's see how many people I can DQ this match. And, whereas in 3-gun, we all understand, the importance of safety. And we take safety extremely important. We also understand, and this, me being an RO and been doing it pretty much since I got started, understanding that this person spent a lot of time and a lot of money to come to this match. And so I better be absolutely sure that they did something wrong before I am going to DQ them.
Yeah. I got DQ'd in Prado shooting out in California at one of the major matches there that they have. It's like I forgot what it is. It's a big match. I got DQ'd. I was on video. Okay. And you can see that I didn't break the 180. And I'm like, I'm on video. There's no way I broke the 180. No freaking way. And the RO's like, nope, you broke the 180. Everybody on the squad, he didn't break the 180. Call the match director over. It's on video. Sorry, we can't look at that. Like that kind of stuff. It's like that's where you get the subjectivity part of it. And the rigidity. Go back to USPSA. I think USPSA has a bunch of people that are ROing that I have seen that are, there's some really, really good ones. There's some really mediocre ones. And that kind of affects how you shoot. Like I've shot matches and I'm like, oh geez, that guy's ROing. I better be super freaking careful. Because anywhere close to the 180 broke the 180. I watched him DQ a couple people. And so it's like, again, we start talking stage design ties into the ROs. If you're going to make stages with a lot of really close 180 shots, you got to have good ROs, or you wind up DQing people that shouldn't be DQ'd. And you're degrading the sport. Now people are going back on, I didn't want to go out there. I don't want to pay, 25 or 50 or 80, or I go to a major and, hundreds of dollars to get, basically trick fucked into a 180. Like that's why I think it's stage design and ROs they're not separable, because you can't have one that's really aggressive and have an RO that can't do the job well. Otherwise, people get jerked around.
Chris, I don't think you were necessarily done. So
Yeah, sorry about that. I got on a tirade.
Nah, I can tell it's a heartfelt subject. Yeah, I mean that was pretty much all I had on that particular instance of where there will be ROs that put themselves in immediate physical danger so that they can DQ somebody for breaking the 180, which is I don't care that much about the 180. Somebody breaking that in order to look down the muzzle of a pistol. I will say on the like each side obviously has goods and bads, but on the multi-gun side, I've seen because you don't have as clear of a structure or as clear of a rule book across the matches, or formally trained ROs, even though there can be formally trained ROs in USPSA who are not very proficient. But I've seen it where ROs will be much more hesitant to make a call, even when something is very dangerous, and people get away with that, which can end poorly. I haven't seen it end poorly yet, but people are a lot more hesitant there and will allow things to become more dangerous. Like I've looked down muzzles, and people want to give them more on the local match level. They want to have them like give them a stage DQ and then have them shoot the next one. It's like, hey, this guy's like brand new, bless his heart. And we'll work with them and maybe you could like work with them on the side. But the next stage, he then also broke the 180 again pretty blatantly and then was DQ'd. It's like, I don't think we need to look down a muzzle twice when you're standing behind them for a DQ. But those are kind of one-off situations. I think we got pretty far off the stage design there, though. On the
we kind of start bleeding it. I mean,
it all kind of blends into each other.
Yeah, I came up with some criteria. But yeah, we kind of got into like the competitive level of the match. But a few points that you guys hit on. Mike, you mentioned like the local matches where it's just like stand and deliver, move to another box, stand and deliver. That shit I can do in the range of my own time. I don't want to pay for you to set that up for me. The way I look at a good stage is that it should be like a puzzle for me to solve. It shouldn't be too puzzle-like, and it shouldn't be too, for lack of a better term, smooth-brained. I shouldn't just be gliding through it, just hosing open targets. I want some critical thought applied. So what Mike was talking about is, yes, give me some easy targets, but throw some technical targets in there too and make me change speeds. Kind of like Formula One racing. Like there's stretches where you're building up speed, but there's also turns and all the other stuff, maneuvering around other drivers. Like I want a little bit of both. That's what I'm here to enjoy.
Yeah. Kind of also on the stage design aspect of it too. Stages that give you options. You kind of hit it.
Yes.
In terms of, box A to box B. No, that's bullshit. And on the multi-gun side, specifically 3-gun, don't create a stage where, I'll put it like this. And I'm very upfront whenever it comes to Jason Byerly matches because he does such a great fucking job. We call him the 3-gun master in a sense. Like he gives you stages that gives you options, but he's also cognizant of the fact that you can shoot these stages and you're going to be racking your brain in so many different ways that he also does give you some stages that are just straightforward. That way you're not thinking as hard, because when you're shooting a 6 or a 9 or a 10 stage match where you are constantly thinking of different ways and different options of trying to shoot that match, you are leaving that match with your brain like kind of melted. Like your brain is hurting at that point. You're exhausted. You're mentally and physically exhausted. So he breaks it up by giving you some stages where you have those options and you can kind of run however you need to. And then he also gives some where it's like mentally you're not having to think nearly as hard by what it is that you're going to do. So, having again that flow to where you have the ability to make your own decisions.
I can understand that sometimes there are very straightforward stages that people will design because they want to isolate a certain skill. So like a lot of times USPSA, I think Multigun does it sometimes too. where it's like, okay, I want to see if this guy can shoot weekend. I don't think every stage should have weekend, but that's like they'll do standard stages and stuff like that. I understand not incorporating a lot of other aspects, having a straightforward stage when you want to see if somebody can do that.
Yeah. Here's another aspect too, and I was actually talking to Mark Yackley about this a couple days ago. Thinking of matches in terms of what is most beneficial for service members, for us, for Marines, for others, Army, Navy, Coast Guard, whatever. What what kind of matches do we want to go to as Marines that's going to bring out that proficiency and those skill sets that we do as Marines? And then what do we want to do just as normal people going to a match, just trying to have fun? Some that can just, we're not having to move as far, because as a Marine, I want those natural terrain matches. I want things that are going to push me physically, mentally, and I'm moving long distances for a purpose, not just running to run, but I am moving with a purpose, trying to get these targets, because when you're going to combat, you're not necessarily knowing where the enemy is. So it's having you search for targets in a logical format.
I agree. I think it's the physicality part of it. It either appeals to some people or repels others. But I think having good that PCSL match that Max Legrandis runs, there's a lot. There's like little jungle lanes and stuff. They're all purposeful. And there's long shots and short shots, and there's a lot. There's good difficulty. There's some just pure speed stuff, but it's a good balance. But I know that there are people that don't want that. I think that particular match for a freaking 03, like that match out of the PCSL match is great, because it's a lot of running, it's a lot of terrain. You're running down in little gulches and crawling through tubes and stuff like that. I mean, it's just 03 heaven with a gun, man. I think it's great. Some people don't like that because they don't want to crawl around and run on jungle lanes. So there's a different flavor to it. But I believe it forces more skills out of you, because you've got longer shots. You've got, standing shots. They had one where it looked like a BC with the center, with a heart plate on it.
Yep.
And you have to shoot that. It was like 50 yards or something like that, between 50 and 70. And if you miss it, that's if you hit it, that's a bonus for 20 points. Each miss is a penalty, is a 10-point penalty. So basically, if you get 2 misses then and get a hit, you zero it out. So it's like stuff like that where you got to decide, can I make that shot? Like, there's some decision making, which I think was kind of cool, because there's a level of skill that's hard. But the matches like that, I love matches like that. I mean, and I like for like I said, for an 03, that's friggin' awesome. Some people don't want that. They want more of the stand and deliver with a little bit more difficulty. So, I mean, as far as the match design goes, I think it's going to be hard to pick something out for everybody. But I think on the military side, anybody that's that side, field courses, like jungle lane kind of stuff, whether it's pistol rifle or both, or pistol rifle shotgun, that is definitely the best.
So that kind of goes into the next subject of match props, and that can be anything from tank traps to barricades to cars to having bear traps and poppers where it has, what is it, the rappel line where it has a target come down like a rope or something like that. Like what do you look for in terms of that?
One thing that, and this is kind of like match props / targetry, is that the visual representation or presentation is the same throughout the match, or as close as it can be. I know there's some debate. Sometimes matches won't paint targets, or sometimes matches will paint targets at the beginning, but they won't touch them again throughout. And there's going to be some inconsistencies because we're playing this sport outside. Like, you can't control everything. You can be shooting in almost a tornado and then the calm. Like, that's not going to be consistent. But trying to avoid setting a target in an area that's going to be shaded during one part of the day and not shaded during the other part of the day. Or if you are going to paint target, have a consistent time frame that you paint them. Or if it's really hard to see for everybody, at least it's consistent for everybody. So that's all that really matters.
Mike?
I just consistency apparatus, like you said. I mean, I've seen stuff that it's swingers that were inconsistently set up that swing at different rates. Like legitimately, you can tell the difference.
Yeah.
The stuff that like exact same stuff you said. I didn't get your name, but anyway.
Oh, it's Chris
Same,
Scott.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris. Same stuff Chris said. Like some of it you just kind of get jacked because of you're either facing into the sun or not, but different times of the day, different sun shining on different things in different ways has a distinct effect. You see that too when you're like if you shoot steel matches during the day versus at dusk. If you're shooting irons or dots or like, there's a lot of stuff that comes into play. I think just overall, it's just the consistency of it. First of all, the apparatus, the reasonableness of what you're doing. I mean, if it's super easy to you have a giant, really fully exposed swinger, then why are you even wasting the time doing that? You might as well just have a no shoot in front of it and you got to shoot ahead at 20 yards instead of a full, metric that's going like this. I'm like, hey, it starts to take more time to set up, but it's got to make sense. It's got to be logical. It's got to be consistent. And there shouldn't be a radical difference, throughout times of day. So it's basically, mirroring what he said.
Frank?
Yeah, I am all about the consistency. And for me, I think that's a huge feather in the cap in terms of staff reset. So the few matches that can get away with staff reset, that's a benefit, right? You have the same people setting that prop every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And they see it, so they see the changes in terms of it wearing or falling out of calibration, and they can fix it. When you have competitors resetting every stage, that competitor is looking at that thing for the first time throughout that day, and it's going to change every time they shift out squads. So everything that you guys said, I completely agree. Did you have anything else to add, Matt?
I look at it in terms of also what kind of props are you giving me? And basically without repeating everything you said, yes, consistency is a huge part, but okay, am I going to be able to shoot from a moving vehicle? That's something that's a really, from at a major match perspective, like I want to do something I don't normally get to do at my range. And that's something I do look at in terms of when I go to a major match. Do I get to shoot out of something I don't normally see anymore? Memorial 3-gun or, Battle for the South Fall Brawl. I don't think Fall Brawl, but Battle for the South and Memorial 3-gun, I've consistently shot out of a moving vehicle there. And there are specific ways to be accurate and hit your targets without pushing past that. If you don't do it, if you don't ever really practice it, you're not going to hit all your targets. If you hit a bump, me and Chris experienced this last year. We hit a bump on one of the stages where we're moving from the vehicle. We thought we hit it, but no, that round went just below the target and we didn't even know.
I didn't think I hit it.
Huh?
Yeah. I said I didn't think I hit it, and I had shot like half a meg at it. But yeah. Anyways.
Another cool aspect, like, is there kind of they had a helo prop at Memorial. You got to shoot out of a Huey, not moving, but they had that. You got to shoot out of a plane there, like it. And then that kind of goes back to whenever I shot Blue Ridge 3-gun championship when that was held at Rockcastle Shooting Center all those years ago. That was another one of those matches. Okay, now I'm having to go across a rope bridge, or I'm having to go across a slack line, or I'm shooting on a reverse rooftop, or I'm shooting from a golf cart. It brings out different elements that you don't normally ever see at a local match setting. So I look at match props in saying, what am I going to be getting out of this, and what's the depth of the match going to be, and what's that reset going to look like?
To go off your kind of like shooting out of the plane and stuff, it's interesting that some of those match props, like in reality, you could achieve the same thing by putting some fault lines on the ground. Like when we were shooting out of that plane, it's like obviously not flying or anything. We could have set up fault lines on the ground and a little port to shoot out of when we're shooting out the window. But just the fact that you're running through an aisle of an airliner, like it introduces a fun aspect. That's a huge part of why I shoot. Like I want to be good at shooting guns, but I'm paying for entertainment too. So it's just like neat to have those props.
And you just remind me of something else. Like with those match props, like shooting around a car, And, if I can't shoot over the car and all I can do is engage from under the car, like I remember one of my first Blue Ridges, we could only shoot the stage brief said shoot the 300-yard targets from the right shoulder laying down underneath the car or right behind the car and shoot from underneath. And then you have to switch over to your weak side and do the same thing. It's getting you to be uncomfortable and take shots that you aren't normally doing. And it's teaching you how to fight around a vehicle. So, whenever it comes to rules and scoring transparency, we've kind of already hit this some, but I know USPSA is very structured and very rigid, but whenever you get into the multi-gun facet, most people prefer that it stays an outlaw. Like they don't want some kind of organizing body. And I get why. Three Gun Nation, as beautiful of a thing as it was, it also ruined a lot of things. So, but what that brings up is you're going to matches where there's always different rules, and there's always different changes. So what's your thoughts on that? Chris, if you want to start this.
So I do like I love USPSA because I know I can get into a similar thing no matter where I go. Granted, there's downsides to it. And I like the variability of multi-gun because you can experience a lot more different things depending on whose matches you decide to go to. I think the important part and the successful matches that have been running for a long time, so like Superstition, Three Gun, like they have a posted rule book that's been vetted over multiple matches or multiple years where they've made practical changes to it. So you have like a well vetted rule book, and then you have a group of ROs that knows that rule book, and it's posted ahead of time. So you can read the rule book ahead of time, and the ROs know the rule book. Like any rules that you fall under, you really don't have anything to complain about because you know what you're getting into before it. So I think just actually posting it up and actually following it is the biggest thing.
Mike?
No, just things that are rule books that don't have any ambiguity in them, because that's where people either feel like they get screwed or they want to argue. It's like it should be straightforward. I mean, I don't care what the rule. I do care in the big picture, but I don't really care in the specificity, like exactly what the rules have to be. I just want to know what they are, so I know. Other than that, I've been to some matches where they don't really know, or that there's too much left open, and then you get sea lawyers out there and everybody's trying to find a way to get around the system kind of thing. But that Rio they have for their Three Gun stuff, they've got great ROs, and they've got they've been doing it a long time, and they've got so many good shooters. That is a perfect a model for it, because they've got that shit down.
Frank?
Yeah, this kind of brings back something that Chris said about rules being enforced unevenly or just maybe not being there at all in terms of safety at local matches. If it's a lot of buddy systems and you're letting, because let's be real, there are going to be some shooters that show up to these matches because they want to get better and because they just got into gun ownership, and we should absolutely be applauding that. We should be supporting that. But sometimes those individuals they're not safe gun handlers. But it's not good to let them continually get away with bad practices without, at some point you're going to have to enforce a rule. You're going to be like, hey, we can't continue to enjoy our sport in a safe manner with you participating. So you got to figure some stuff out on your own before you come back. I actually got a follow-on question for the group. Have you guys seen that typically, I'd say mostly local matches, if there's pretty good competitive parity and good shooters at that match, is that usually indicative that the guys that are rowing that match are going to be pretty decent as well?
I think at the local level, more so, because those are the guys ROing. I don't know. I've seen some pretty bad ROs at nationals.
So that's different, because I think at the local match, the guy who's winning the match, he might be helping RO in a squad, right? But the problem, I think, with major matches is that if you're a really good shooter, it's a disadvantage for you to shoot on staff day.
You're
It
absolutely right.
is.
And a lot of people who RO major matches are people that are new to the sport and they want to do something that's more at an affordable level. Not saying
Yes.
that's every single one of them, but like, okay, Chris Wiseman, he's a local North Carolina shooter. He is one of those guys. He is the grandfather of ROs, or the father. I don't want to, he's 40, 47, I think. He's not that old, but he always ROs matches, every major match. And that's just who he is. He makes it, he's on a cop salary. I don't think he does it because of that, but he enjoys the aspect of meeting everybody at a match.
And
And but the real majority of people that RO are your newer shooters.
yeah. So I guess what I see is like at your level 2 and above matches, specifically for USPSA, you are going to get two groups of people. You get like the perpetual career ROs who tend not to be that great of shooters. I'm talking about like the C to D class shooter. That like it's more of a tourism thing for them, I guess. But it's also the fact that like if you're shooting on staff day, you're essentially being a guinea pig for that match, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if there's something wrong with the match, you are the person that's going to suffer because it's not going to affect the actual people who are going to be shooting in the days after you. But what I'm getting at is like if you're looking for, and like I think most of this episode we're trying to direct listeners towards how do you find like what a good local match, and a little bit about major matches, but for a good local match, usually if there are really good individual shooters there and they're talented and they've dedicated a lot of time to the sport, usually those guys are going to make pretty decent ROs as well. Now there may be some warts there, like some of the good shooters aren't good coaches and they're not very helpful. But for the most part, I have been the beneficiary of good shooters who are also good at ROs who are willing to help out new shooters. That's kind of why I brought that up.
So this on the RO subject, this is one thing that was kind of weird for me coming up here to Virginia, because down in North Carolina, if whether it was a Carolina Guns and Gears U City match or whether it was Tar Heel 3-gun match, they treated the ROs, ROs got free match entry, but they were dedicated ROs for local matches. Whenever I came up here to Virginia, whether I shot Shadowhawk, Thermont, wherever, even at Quantico, it's like there were no dedicated ROs. The timer, the tablet switched between individuals, and I don't necessarily like that fact. I like having dedicated ROs because now you're going to be getting consistency across the board with one from one RO to the next RO that's dedicated to RO you.
Yeah, that's if it's possible, I think that's great, but it's not always feasible in every format.
I think manpower, getting dedicated ROs like that is a manpower issue, one. And two, back to what you were first saying. I'll look at matches. If I've never been to a match before, I'll look at the match breakdown and see who signed up. And if there's, a bunch of, A class and above people, there's some GMs in there, there's a bunch of masters, and then there's like most of the people are A class, and then there's only a couple. I will normally, I'll have an affinity for that. I'll go, that'll be a pretty cool match because you've got talent there, and you're not going to have a bunch of masters and some GMs and a bunch of A class shooters go to a crap match. They're just not going to waste the time. So that usually is kind of indicative of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, what do you guys look at in terms of price? We'll start with locals, but I think also in terms of majors, I think it's a good thing to talk about in terms of price for major matches. So, Mike, what are you willing to pay for a good local? And then, what are you willing to pay for a good major?
Well, if you look at, most of the locals that I've shot have been like $25 to $40 matches. I haven't shot anything much higher than that. I figure if it's a well set up match, $10 $10 a stage. If it's 5 stages, it's $50 ish or below. I mean, that's on the high side, but I haven't spent a lot of money. I mean, the stuff I shoot out here in Utah, or when I shot in Tucson, was $25. And I thought that was reasonable, because you've got ranges and setup and people have to work, majors you're going to get depending on the level of quality of the match. I understand it's going to be, a couple $100 up. I mean, it's not going to be inexpensive, but I don't, I have to look at I look at the match and they have the breakdown, what it, where it is, who's running it, what level of match it is. Is it a 2-gun, 3-gun, what's the format? And then look at Rio matches are worth the money. I mean, there's a couple of $250, $300, something like that, I think, for Superstition. What is that now? I haven't shot it in a long time, so I haven't shot it in 4 years. So.
Last time I saw it,
350. Yeah, but that's I mean, if you're looking at everything that I've seen, every major that I've seen has been 250 and above.
Yep.
So the last time I shot it was 300 actually, and when I shot it at Rio. So I think it's reasonable. They've got great props and all that. So I think if you're looking at that, that's an investment, obviously, for some people, but that's also on the competitive side. That's where you go. That's where you find the best competitors. That's where you see what you got. A local match isn't worth $5 if it's a bank of 3 targets at 3 yards followed by a bank of 4 targets at 5 yards, and it's not worth it. So again, it's kind of measuring them out. But $25 for a local match, and then depending on what your sectionals or areas provide, you're getting $100+ obviously, 100, 200, 300. So I mean, it's hard. Like I said, it's hard for me to evaluate because I don't shoot that many majors. I haven't recently. So I'm kind of I'm probably not the greatest judge of that.
Chris?
So back when I had a job, I was willing to pay a lot more for matches. But yeah, now I'm unemployed, a little lower.
Unemployed, please.
Yeah, I would say for major matches, kind of to go off what Mike said, I don't care that much about the price unless it's something like astronomical. Like if it's $600, yeah, I'm gonna look a little closer. But I've been to bad matches that are $150. I'd gladly pay $100 more, $200 more, because you're paying for the travel, you're paying for the ammo. The match fee is actually kind of a minor part of the overall expense when you go into a major match. And then local matches. I think I've paid like $50 at Paulo most recently. But if you get a good day of shooting, I think $50 is worth it. That's kind of high on the high end. Like if I was doing that 4 days a week, that kind of suck. Or 4 days a month.
But you say Paula as in California?
Yeah, California.
Yeah. Because it's in California too.
Yeah, it's the California surplus.
And then you pay like more gas to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like Tucson and Utah match like $25. So
I think that's a great level for it to be. I will say one thing about Paula, at least and I think they do in their USPSA too. But their multi-gun, they had paid setup crew. And they had guys. And that I thought that turned into really good stages too, because you had a mix of guys that were paid to set up the stage and paid to tear down the stage and design the stage. They had an incentive to actually put out some good work and stages, and you had a variety of people, so you weren't shooting the same kind of coming from the same guy's head for the whole match. So I thought I was glad to pay a little bit more for that.
Frank?
Yeah, I'll echo Chris's sentiment. The match fee isn't a prohibitive factor for me. I basically paid my way throughout most of the pistol team summer season, and mostly what I was worried about was being economical with my lodging, my travel, all that other stuff, transporting ammo. Like Chris said, the match fee ends up being the least of it. I'd say for a local, 25 to 30 is about right. You are going to pay that California surplus if you're shooting in California. But that, if we're talking about Pala, that is a very quality match, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it when we get into the regions. I think from my perspective, I look more at if we're looking at cost, what's it going to cost me in terms of time? And we're going to talk about travel later, but if if a match has a reputation for being terribly run and inefficient, that is going to more likely to drive me away than having a high cost.
Yeah, no, I agree with all those points there. You know, major match, if I know what I'm getting, I'm gonna pay the money. Uh, ran into a situation last year where the Marine Corps shooting team was planning on going to, I think it was the Wyoming governor's match the last time it was ran by a certain organization. And I saw the team had it planned to go to that match. And I looked it up because I knew it was declining in quality and participation. So I looked it up and I was like, okay, so I see that the match fee here is like $250, $300. It's at a different location and there's only 30 people registered now. So I went over to the staff and so I see the action shooting team at the time. And I was just like, hey, why are you guys going to this match? He's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, he's like, I've heard it was a great match. I was like, okay, one, I recognize somebody is from that area, so they're wanting to go to a match that's near their hometown. And I was like, that's great and all, but before you make a decision to go there, like, let's look at the numbers. Look at how many people are participating. Look at the declining factor of all their matches, and then look at what you're actually getting, you know. And whenever he saw all those factors, he's like, "You're absolutely right. Like, I'm not going to participate in this, and the team is not going to participate in this." And so it's kind of, and I know we're kind of going into like how do you determine, but those are some of the factors I look at whenever I'm willing to pay money. If it's one of those like classic, okay, let's go out to Superstition, let's go out to Rocky Mountain, let's go to Hard as Hell, let's go to one of these major matches that's been around for so long. And like when people think of Three Gun, those are some of the matches that they think of. Okay, I'm willing to go to those and I'm willing to pay the money for them. So we're kind of going into what I just talked about. But so Chris, Mike, and Frank have both lived on East Coast, West Coast, where I've spent the majority of my time here on the East Coast. We've all traveled across the country to shoot. But before we commit to going to a match in another state or across the country, what is your process of elimination and determining if you're going to attend a match or not? Chris?
So I'll look at, like you talked about, the registration numbers. If there's actually going to be heat there too. So sometimes they have it kind of hidden where you can look, but like a lot of the good shooters under like reserve spots, so you can't see their name. I think sometimes you can hover over each one, which is a pain in the butt to try and figure that out. But yeah, look to see if like is AMU going. Would be an easy one because they're typically not going to go to a match that isn't very well represented. And then now that I'm having to pay for more stuff, first when I was on the team, like how easy is it to get there? But if it's a really good match, it doesn't matter that much. And now also look like proximity. Like I'm on the West Coast now again. I'm gonna be sticking probably to the West Coast a little bit more for matches just because it's a lot cheaper to drive and bring my own hotel than to
so
fly.
Since I have a job now, you want me to travel out to you so we can go to a match together?
Pretty much,
yeah. Mike.
That's the process.
I I know a bunch of people that are, pretty accomplished on that shoot a lot. That's all they do is shoot. I'll just pick up the phone and call. I'll look at a match. I'll look at, who signed up for it right then. I'll look at the overall numbers. Like if I get on practice score and get geeky, I'll just go backwards and go, is it declining or is it increasing or is it about the same? And is it fully staffed? And then I'll just call some guys that I know and go, hey man, do you know anything? Have you shot this? Yeah, I've shot it before. It sucked. Or yeah, I've shot it before. It's freaking baller. I'm going to go again this year. And then it's a lot of word of mouth. And I'll find somebody that shot it last year. Like if they shot it 3 years ago, okay, that's cool. But a lot of things can change in 3 years. So I get recent a recent freaking AAR basically on it from a legit competitive shooter. And that usually tells me everything I need to know. And they'll usually tell me, oh yeah, the hardest shot was 367 up on the hill and it's an 8-inch plate. And like they'll give me some dope on the whole match, but I'm overwhelmingly do it word of mouth. That to me is the best way to do it.
How about you, Frank?
So it's a couple of things. It's the personality of the match. Is it going to be a well-run match? And I think what was really cool about hopping on with the Pistol Team summer schedule is that Scott Rader knows a lot of these matches and he knows which ones are quality. He knows a lot of match directors by name. So I kind of trusted him to kind of like put together the schedule, and I just hopped along and got exposed to a lot of really great matches as a result. But I think even more important is are my friends going to be there? I want to shoot with the boys. And if it sucks, if either the match sucks because the match sucks or because the weather sucks or something else, I want to at least like suffer with good company.
Good point.
So another thing that I do is, in 3-gun is like the guys who travel to good matches, it's a small community. And so kind of like what Mike does, hopping on the phone, calling somebody. I do a lot of that myself, but I also hop on Facebook and, everybody, all the 3-gunners know that there's a 3-gun meme page where we all roast each other, but there's also a 3-gun information and events page and a 3-gun talk page that Dave Hartman runs. And so you can kind of, and Chad Swartout, he'll put together like a major match list on an Excel document, given when it's going, how much it costs, who's the match director, all their contact information. And so I'll look at those lists, kind of pick out a schedule of what I want. And nowadays, like much like Scott Rader, I know everybody and anybody, and I can just pick up a phone and call the match director. They're going to know who I am. And then I'll call people who do plan on going to that. And it's like, hey, what's skinny on this? What am I getting into? And I do kind of an evaluation like that. But you can find out a lot on Facebook. You can find out a lot by just picking up a phone.
Yeah. Just side note on that, like some of the good info to get as well, if you can do that, is what's the longest shot? What's the hardest shot? Do I need glass? Can I run a dot? Like different, there's some peculiars as you get deeper into the game. Like, hey, do I need a 1-6 or can I just run a red dot on there? Mm-hmm. So that those little things make a difference, I think.
Oh, I agree.
You can tailor your gun.
Yep. Yeah. So this is more for the local matches. What is everybody's average distance or time that they're willing to spend in a vehicle to go to a good local match? Mike, if you want to start it out.
Outside of one exception, I would say for me, it was when I was in Tucson, driving up to Rio was 90 minutes. So that was kind of my standard, was 90 minutes. I'll drive down to St. George from where I am. I live in Utah now. I'll drive down to St. George for a good match because the PCSL matches are freaking great. They're awesome matches. So that's worth the drive. That's like a 3-hour drive. I could literally drive down, shoot it, and drive back and get back late, or I can just spend the night in a hotel. But that's an anomalous one. That's a really great match. But a local match, 90 minutes. It's got to be a good match to be 90 minutes. I got matches right now that are 10 minutes from my house, so I kind of got over.
And just to kind of add, so the match he's talking about is a PCSL match held by Max Leograndis out there in Utah. So
St. George, yeah.
Yep.
That thing is, I'm telling you, if anybody listening to this, if you can get there, if you're near there, it's a great match. It's a great, and it brings in shooters like Max and Zach Smith and guys like J.R. Guerra from Terrence Place. It brings in a lot of really good shooters, and it's fun, and to me it's the future of the action shooting sports. It's really well run, it's really well designed, and it's great people. There's no jackassery.
Yeah, PCSL is getting a lot of buzz for good reasons. It's worth noting that if you are in the Quantico or just Virginia area, that Quantico is running, I believe, a PCSL match in January.
Oh, really?
Sweet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
They
like their targets too.
They ordered the targets. They're ready to rock.
Yep. Alex Go King's kind of heading that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alex Go King's heading that up.
Nice.
Um,
Good dude. Solid dude.
oh yeah. Chris, what about you?
I'd say about 2
Now that
hours.
you're almost homeless.
uh, yeah, it'd be like 2 hours. When I was single, it was like 3 hours when I was in California. But now it's now I just don't shoot that much. So yeah, but it was about 2 hours. It gets to be a
Are
little
you
bit too.
down by San Diego still?
No, now I'm in Tucson, so I just
Oh.
moved here. Yeah,
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah. But I was in San Diego a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you got 3 points, you've got Pima Pistol Club, and then if you want to go up to Rio, you got tons of stuff up there. So you got some
I'm
matches
pretty
close by.
excited about the area. Yeah.
Yeah,
Seems
yeah.
pretty-
Have you if you Pima Pistol Club is a good place if you're close by it. It's a good place to train because that's where I used to shoot. And once they know that you're legit, you can pretty much do what you want. Like they've got a lot of apparatus you could use. You just go in there and sign like $100 a year. It's a great place. It's a great range. So well worth it.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
How about you, Frank?
I am spoiled right now in terms of having like 3 quality matches within hour and a half of me. So Thermont, hour and a half, Quantico is 40 minutes, Fredericksburg is a little over an hour. When I was stationed in Camp Lejeune, the farthest I would drive was either at To Go Shoot Outdoors or Sir Walter Gun Club, and both of those were about 3 hour drive one way. But it was a good enough local match that I was willing to make that drive. And I was pretty aggressive about getting homies to come out with me as well.
Yes, that makes it easier if you go a long drive.
Mhm.
Some of the freaking
Yeah.
boys come with you, and it's like it's not a big
Got it.
deal.
It's a mini road trip. It's awesome. Yeah.
Oh yeah, a
So
lot of grab ass going on, but it's good.
all right. So for me, I think I'm the outlier here. So I've kind of mentioned before in the past that Quantico or the Virginia area does not have a 3-gun. I know Quantico, Go King is going to start putting on some 3-gun PCSL stuff, which is great. It makes it like a 45-minute drive for me. But Peacemaker doesn't host 3-gun anymore. So realistically, if I want to go to a match, a really, really good match, the closest one to me is down in North Carolina. And that's held by Zoo City Armory. And it's about a 4.5 hour drive. But the reason why I say I'm willing to go there and drive that distance is because it's a legit match. It's almost like a major match on a monthly basis. And if I'm going to drive up on a Friday night, I have a place to stay on the range. I can crash in a camper there at the range. So I wake up in the morning, jump up and, go shoot a match. And then I can drive home that night. So I am willing to travel for a good monthly match.
And kind of going off of that, you're like combining things too, and I think that's another like decision factor. Like you're going down for you're really good friends with all those guys. So that makes it worth it. And even like going to other matches, like there might be things in the local area that you can make a whole weekend out of that you enjoy doing because we all have other hobbies besides. Well, we don't have that many hobbies besides shooting. It's kind of all consuming, but we like to do other things.
Yeah. Yeah, like usually whenever I go down there to North Carolina, I'm going down on a Friday afternoon, evening time frame, and I'm hooking up with the boys. And then, we're drinking some bourbon or watching a movie because they have a clubhouse, I guess you can say, at the range. It's kind of just like their work area. So we have a TV there and, just kind of hanging out bullshitting. We go out to dinner together, and it's a bunch of guys that either retired from the Marines or are still in the Marines that are going there. And then, a bunch of the third group guys, like a lot of third group guys go to that match. And, one thing I love about, that area is North Carolina has a lot of good heat. They have a lot of solid shooters. So you're not just going to a match where it's just your local guys. You're going to a match where there is national level talent there. So you're constantly pushing yourself and you can constantly evaluate yourself against national level talent. So it kind of goes into our next subject. and this is going to be, I kind of mentioned it. Everybody's kind of spent their amount of time East Coast, West Coast, Southwest, what have you. So, um, I guess we can go around the table and, kind of tell the listeners based on locations that we've all been in, what are some good clubs that are worth going to in those local areas. And, I'll start it out with the mid-Atlantic area. North Carolina is not mid-Atlantic, but I'll just lump it in there. Virginia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. And in Virginia, honestly, really good multi-gun, 2-gun, 3-gun is Quantico when they do have them. It's not often that they have them, but when they do have them, they're worth going to because Alex Goking, he takes a lot of what other people have put out and then he designs the stages based on what he is allowed to do on Quantico. In the Pennsylvania area, you got York, Ontalani, and Topton. All very solid matches. The longest range you're really going to get out of those matches about 250, 250 yards. So not that much long range, but they utilize the space that's available to them and make the matches challenging in their own right. And then the North Carolina area, I've kind of hit on this a lot already. The Zoo City Armory out of Asheboro. You have one long range stage there, but you also have, that long range stage, you're getting 400 yards. And then whenever you're going into the bays, you're getting a complex base stage, not just a moving from left to right or box A to box B. You are getting your options. You are able to think about what you're going to do. And the cool thing about it is one person might have a completely different stage from another person, but they have the same time, same score, because they are that good and they're that comfortable running what they're most comfortable running with. And it's a really cool aspect there. And then another place there, I wouldn't say it's local, a local match, but it's more moderate, medium match, not a major, but a medium level matches. Whenever John Sherbert runs like the Griffin Group Rumbles or the night matches there, you know, they, Frank, you've shot those matches there. They're
It's a great time.
complex. Yeah.
Yeah. The benefit of Griffin Group is that the layouts on that range allow them to get away with things that no other range, like we're talking 360 bays. We're talking really good long range setups where you're shooting from like a 2-story scaffolding and all this other stuff, like shooting from the bed of a truck. Yeah, like Griffin Group, there's a lot of money there because they train a lot of military and law enforcement. That's what makes it such a great range. And the fact that Sherb runs those matches, he's also a really good match director.
Yeah. And Chris and Frank, like I answered more of the 3-gun stuff, but you guys have shot USPSA here in Virginia, Pennsylvania area. Do you have anything to add to that on the USPSA side?
Frank, do you want to go first? And now you're
Yeah.
yeah.
So the current circuit in Virginia, the locals that I will go to over and over, Quantico, Fredericksburg, and then I'll go up to Maryland for Thurmont. So I am living in Manassas, so it's like that. Those are the closest ones to me. When I shot in North Carolina, the locals that I was willing to travel to, Sir Walter, which is in Raleigh, Pitt County, which is in Greenville, North Carolina, Low Country, and this is the odd one. It's on the border of North Carolina, South Carolina, and it's weird because it actually doesn't share any of the characteristics I've been talking about. Like there's no heat, there's not a huge population, but the stages are really good. It's actually kind of sad because I think that match is dying out. But Low Country is a good one. Go Shoot Outdoors is in Sanford, North Carolina. That's Chris Tilley's range. He's been, he's done a bunch of world shoots. He shoots for Bull Armory. He puts together some really outstanding matches. I took a JJ Rakaza class. The first day was just working with JJ. And the third day, we shot through Chris Tilley's match. And JJ squatted with us, and he basically like coached us through the entire match. And that was really, that was a very valuable experience. And if you're willing to go all the way out to Charlotte, Rowan County is really good too. That's where they hold the state sectional most of the time. Random shout out. It's not North Carolina or Virginia. I did visit my dad once in Austin. I shot at the Austin Rifle Club in Manor, Texas, and that was a good match as well.
Okay.
I'll throw in a couple 3-gun matches. They're not locals, but they're not crazy huge ones. You're still going to shoot them in a day. And if you live in that area, you can drive out, shoot them, and then drive back. But Mid-Atlantic Multi-Gun Challenge.
Yes.
Run each year. It's fairly inexpensive too. I think it's like 100 some bucks.
150, I think.
Sounds
125.
Right. And that was always a very fun match. It's pretty cool too. They do I can't remember the name of it. I had to Google it and I still didn't understand it. But this like tiered payout where it's cash prizes. And you can pick like your different percentage. So like even if you're not necessarily going to be a shooter that's in the top 10% of the match, you can try to compete for prizes, cash prizes lower in the match.
Mm-hmm.
But they run really good stages. They have a little bit of natural terrain there. It's all within like 200 yards. So that's a very fun match that we enjoyed going to each year. And then another one-day match is the 3-man 3-gun. That's been a really fun one up in Pennsylvania. Yeah. So, and that's same thing. It's like with the team, each person's paying about, I think, $150.
130.
Okay, even less. So that's another fun one if you're in the local area there to get a couple buddies. And there is a wide range of skill levels. So there'll be law enforcement guys who've never shot 3-gun before shooting it, and it's a pretty good environment for that.
You know, we've kind of talked about 3-man 3-gun, but what I will reiterate on that is like that's a match that doesn't have any movement and doesn't have really any complexity. What it does have is stand and deliver. Like shoot your game, shoot as fast and accurate as you can, and have a good time with your boys. Like you come up with your stage plan based off of your strengths. If you are a strong pistol shooter, you shoot your pistol. If you're a stronger rifle shooter, you shoot your rifle. And if you're a stronger shotgun shooter, that's what you're going to go to. And you rotate. They have like a tag system. One person tags in, then the next person, then the next person, and you kind of come up with your stage plan based off of your strengths. Now, there are times you're going to have to shoot. Everybody's going to be shooting the same gun. But for the most part, you can come up with stage plans based off of your strength. All right. So, Mike, do you have any experience with like the Mid-Atlantic or the East Coast area?
No, none at all.
All right. Georgia and Florida. I don't have a whole lot of experience there, but I shot an Atlantic 3-gun match. It was a state championship. The Georgia State Championship with Scott Rader and some of the other guys on the team, and that was a really well run match. And that's hosted by Atlanta 3-gun A3G, and then another really good club that a friend of mine, Scott Noonan, runs. I want to say it's East Alabama Gun Club. And those are relatively close to military installations in the Georgia area.
If I may, for Georgia, Florida. So Covington Gun Club is in the vicinity of Atlanta. That's where I took my first JJ class and did actually shoot a match there. But there was a lot of heat there at the class that was local to the area, which was addictive. And they all spoke very highly of that match. And then in Florida, I shot the Florida State match, which was down in like just south of Tampa. It's actually in a really weird spot. It's a bunch of like shooting bays that's in vicinity of a dump that's also in vicinity of the city of Tampa. So it smells like complete ass at times, but it was a pretty good match.
You're not selling it.
It's also close to where JJ lives.
Okay.
Mixed bag. Don't breathe.
And then Frostproof is right around there too at Universal Shooting Academy. Are they still doing stuff?
Probably, if you can make your way out to Frostproof.
Yeah, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Right, an alligator out there.
All right, so the next area, and I know Chris and Mike.
To add on that one for Georgia/Florida.
Sorry.
Yeah, just a couple like Universal. Even though people badmouth it on a lot of the podcasts, it seems like they used to hold a ton of USPSA matches there, and people got sick of going in the middle of nowhere, Florida. I think that's one of the best ranges I've shot on for running a lot of USPSA stages because it's just a whole line of bays and it's run super efficiently. That was back when Shannon Smith was still running them, so I don't know what it's like now. I'd imagine it's pretty similar. And then Georgia State, USPSA Championship, and the Florida Open are really good, but those aren't necessarily local.
All right. So next area is Texas and Arizona. And I know Chris and Mike, you guys have the most experience out in that area. So Mike, if you want to open it up.
Yeah, the Arizona, I mean, you start with the Mecca, you start with Rio Salado, you can shoot anything, you could shoot freaking 8 matches a week. Tuesday night steel is great. All the 3-gun stuff is really good, really strong 3-gun. Even weekend matches, black rifle matches. There's just get on the website and look at it. And they're good matches. They're well set up, they're well run because there's so many, there's serious heat in that area. There's tons. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting a GM that's, top 10 in the nationals. Like there is a lot of heat up there. So and they don't tolerate crap matches. So everything in Rio Salado is really good. You've got Avery, which is right just down the road from there, Ben Avery. They run really good matches actually. So that area, there's a ton of shooting you can do in the Phoenix area, just those two alone. And then down in Tucson, you've got 3 Points and Pima Pistol Club. 3 Points is further south, and they actually run little local weekend matches that are good. Pima Pistol Club runs USPSA matches that are good. So that area is there's a lot of shooting within 90 miles. There's a ton. Like I could shoot 2 matches a week every single week of every month in the Tucson Phoenix corridor. Everything USPSA, 3-gun, just rifle alone, action rifle alone. I guess you could shoot IDPA, but I don't shoot IDPA. But yeah, and Tuesday night steel every Tuesday night. Yeah, I'll leave that one alone. I'll leave that alone.
What, IDP gay?
Yeah, I don't practice anymore. What? but yeah, just a ton. I mean, I don't know, Chris, whatever on that too. But there's literally you won't be able to shoot all the matches that you'll want to shoot. That's how many matches there are in that quarter, in the Tucson Phoenix quarter. And you can go all the way up to Payson. Payson runs really good matches. You could shoot 3 classifier matches on just the USPSA side. You can easily shoot 3 classifier matches a year, easily. So there's a lot. That's how much volume there is there.
Chris, you got anything to add?
No, I'm new to the area. I was actually taking notes on some of those matches. So sure Mike covered everything. Real Salado number I've shot, but that's it.
All right. So I know for Texas, in terms of a monthly basis out near Austin, you have the Texas Shooting Academy, which I want to say that's owned by Jared Halbert, Aaron Hayes, and Steve. I can't think of Steve's last name, but Texas Shooting Academy does host matches there. But in terms of major matches, you have the Texas 3-gun championship, and then also the Vortex shoot off. Texas 3-gun championship, I want to say, is in April timeframe. The team never did get to go out there because it was like right after championships, but that's neither here nor there. But it's a really good match, and that match generally sells out within 5 to 10 minutes. That's how good it is.
Wow.
All right, so we'll move on to California, which all 3 of you, I think, have some experience with. So, Frank?
Yeah, got to start with Pala. That was my introduction to shooting. Unfortunately, I made a terrible mistake and I shot IDPA before I shot USPSA out there. We could get into that origin story another time. It might be a villain origin story, honestly. But yeah, it spoils you because there's good stage design. There's really good shooters out there, and they were very new shooter friendly. Was that also that was also your experience as well, Chris?
Yeah. It they took me in. That's kind of where I shot a Marine Corps match, and I was like, wow, that was awesome. And I wanted to shoot a lot more local matches, and they were very accommodating. There's a bunch of cops and military that shoot out there too, and you kind of just get hooked in the local area, and they very accepting of somebody like me.
So let me ask you this, Chris. When I went to Pala, that was that was the first time I realized that nobody followed the goddamn laws in California whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, did you also find that being a shooter in California, that shooting community was a lot more close knit and protective of each other, just naturally, just based on the state that they were shooting in?
Yeah, that I was kind of surprised
Yeah.
because it was all I knew at first. Like, oh sweet, every place has like 3 matches or 3 local 3-gun matches a month back in their heyday there. And um I didn't realize how tight knit the community was until I moved to Virginia and I
Yeah.
couldn't find a 3-gun match. And then it also felt like honestly a lot of the matches I went to Virginia just like an outsider where everybody's kind of in their own
Yeah.
group and
Yeah.
nobody interacts.
It's like
it is totally. Oh no, it's just Paula has I tell you a Paula story from the beginning of my shooting. But yeah, the California, just because I do a lot of work out in California and I shoot matches out in California, and my partner who was a O3 as well, we're gonna start shooting a match every month together as instructors, so that just to kind of talk, walk the talk. But yeah, that community out there is super close knit. And I used to shoot a Prado when JoJo's crew was down there, Jojo Vidanius, and then now they've got Route 66 Shooting Sports Park. Now I'm actually going to be shooting out there next month. So it's like but the community is super freaking tight knit, and they're good people. Like I show up people I shot with 8 months ago, like, hey, what's up, man? Hey, we got Gatorade and the little thing. Like it's an awesome. The California shooting crew is freaking sweet, man. They're on.
yeah, couldn't agree more.
And they're serious about it.
Yeah.
Good. There's some heat out there.
Yeah.
Well,
sure.
Oh yeah.
One thing I thought was cool is like, Chris, when you and I went out to Wyoming a couple years ago, all your California boys, they were all like law enforcement officers. I think you were the only outlier, but you are an MP, so whatever. Like
Huge
you know,
asterisk. That. Oh, yeah.
but it's like, you guys kind of continue like kind of like the whole Marine relationship. Like, as soon as like you saw them, it was kind of like just it's like you guys never left each other. And it was just really cool to see like, the shooting community like that. Where we're down on other sides of the country now, but like we're still getting together and like you still have a very close relationship with those guys out there.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I actually just rolled through we were on a road trip. So I shot there about a month ago and it was the same thing, like old friends right away. I will say I noticed that with you with a lot of the North Carolina guys. Where I know you spend a lot of time shooting down there and we'll run across some other parts of the country and
Yeah.
it's pretty neat building those relationships.
All right. So last area that I guess we'll talk about is the Utah, Wyoming, and Colorado area.
I
And
had a couple
Mike.
more California ones.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
There's also Washington State.
Okay. So
So
Chris.
the California ones, this is where I shot my first 3-gun match, West End Gun Club. And then Mike Bauer, who's a pretty good 3-gunner, is running that match now. And I think that's one of the only 3-gun matches in the area now because they stopped running them at Paula. So that's a good match. And then this is not in like Southern California area, but Richmond Rod and Gun Club up by San Francisco.
San Francisco, area. Yeah.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah. I think they run some in San Jose as well at Metcalf. But I know Richmond, I've shot up at Richmond before. That's a good club. But San Jose's got a really nice, Metcalf has a really nice range complex. I'm pretty sure they do some stuff up there, but I don't know that one for sure. I know if you go further north, you got Washington State, you've got a bunch. You've got Marysville, Renton, Paul Bunyan. There's a bunch of them, and that's where Christian's up. He's shooting up there. So there's lots of quality matches in Area 1 in the Seattle area. Like I said, and I shot there because I lived up there for when I was in first group. So there's a lot of good talent up there, a lot of heat up there, and there's good matches.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think of Washington just because I never hear anything about Washington.
Yeah.
And we're kind
of you got guys like Christian Saylor up there. Like there's dudes that are
and like, Juanza Kim too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Juanzik's up there. Yeah. That's true. Yeah, so there's
another area we kind of skimmed over is the Minnesota and Wisconsin area, which, Chris is familiar with that area, but you got what's it called? And Ben Stager's up there for
Yes, yeah, Ben's
USPSA.
up there, Joel's up
Yeah,
there, Joel
yeah,
Park. There's a lot of heat up there.
yeah. So, what's the name of the club where they do Minnesota three gun?
Forest Lake Sportsman's Club, and they're
Yep.
actually gonna have the USPSA multi-gun nationals up there. I
Yep.
know that's very debate for some people, but that's a very active club. I was surprised when we went through there this summer. You can shoot. I think they even have weeknight matches too, but
Oh
they're
wow.
very active.
Yeah, and I
During
know.
the summer, I should say. During the winter, not so active at that club
Not so
at all.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Jamar Villamore, he's the guy who runs like the Minnesota three gun group. It just really good, fun match to be around. Wisconsin. Can't think of the name of that club that we went to for the Wisconsin State Championship.
No,
I
I
don't
don't
know,
remember. Yeah.
but it's right outside of Madison. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
right outside of Madison. Uh, good time, a lot of natural terrain, a lot of wide open areas, a mix of bays, natural terrain, and long range. So that was a good time out there. And I know they run like the monthly matches as well.
They even had
But
a bullseye rifle range too, so that's pretty cool.
yeah, you can.
Is
Yeah.
is it cool? Is that the adjective that we're going to use to
Yeah.
describe?
Maybe we could shoot some PPC too. That'd be awesome.
uh,
No comment.
Yeah.
All right. The last area, and this is kind of Mike's area too. And I know you just moved out to Utah, but you've shot some of the matches there: Utah, Wyoming, and Colorado. So,
I know that Utah, just from shooting them, I've only shot. I just got out here a month and a half ago. I shot a match out here and then down at PCSL. So that the one St. George has a ton of shooting. That's the Nationals were down there before. There's a lot of really good shooters. Justine and Jaleese are down there. Those two girls that are GMs. They're like teenagers. There's a lot of real heat down there. Obviously, Max Leo Grandis. So that's that area. St. George has a lot. I shot up here and the match was really good. There was the squad that I was on was it was almost all carry optics, but there were what 4 or 5 masterclass carry optic shooters on that squad. So it was like it was some freaking talent. I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't a lower end match, and it was just a local match. There's obviously a cross section of talent out here. I think I was like, because I'm not class. I don't think I'm classified yet. I might be classified because of my iron sight stuff. But if I'm classified because of my iron sight, I'm an A class carry optics. But I was like one of the other dudes in there that was A. So it was a good group of dudes in there, and it was a well run match, and it was good apparatus and all that. So I just know that one Salt Lake Practical Shooters. So I'll know more as I push along. But there's a lot of shooting here. There's probably 4 or 5 matches within 60 miles of Salt Lake.
okay. I know, in terms of Wyoming, Chris and we've shot the Wyoming Governor's Cup match, not a local, but it was a really good facility out of Cody, Wyoming. And
Yeah.
then I know down in Cheyenne, they also have a really good club. I'm not really familiar with any of the local stuff that they put on, but like the facilities that I've been to, out there, pretty top quality. Colorado, not entirely sure about what they have out there. I know some of the people
Yeah,
that
magazine
runs.
restrictions, we know that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But
I know
I've heard
nationals there.
I have heard some good things about some of the matches that they have there. I'm just not familiar with them.
Just shoot
One that's
production around 10.
yeah. One that's close, very close to Colorado is Rocky Mountain 3-gun. I think
Yeah.
it's 40 minutes to Colorado border. That's a good one. I know it went away as kind of more of a 3-day match for a couple of years, but I guess they brought it back to a 3-day match. I don't exactly know what it's at now, but that's a good it's a good match at least. I think it still is at the NRA Whittington Center.
Yep.
And if you're interested in like making a match into like a fun overall trip to vacation local area, that's a pretty cool area. same thing like Matt when we went to the Wyoming governor's match in Cody there. You can go to Yellowstone on your day off or whatever. So you can turn that into a whole vacation too if you want.
I mean, you and I hiked up Hart Mountain out there and hiked 2,000 meters or 2,000 yards to the mountain, then hiked another 2,500 yards up the mountain, and almost got stampeded by a bunch of cows on the mountain.
Almost lost your heart on that one too.
What?
Almost lost your heart on that one too.
Yeah.
I did too.
Yep. But yeah, that's kind of everything that we wanted to cover. Do you guys have anything you guys want to add to listeners in terms of, what they should consider and look for in matches?
I'll go real quick.
All right.
Sorry to cut you off, Chris. But if you find a quality match director, that's someone you stick with. I look at like some of them, they're like directors, right? Like if you're a film guy, kind of like I am, some match directors some directors put out really great movies. Like for example, if Christopher Nolan puts something out, I'm probably gonna go see it in theaters. If Michael Bay puts something out, maybe I'm going to see it when it comes out in DVD. And same way with match directors, like some of them put together really good stages and some of them just chain together a bunch of stand and deliver stuff. Another thing I'll say about that is like, I really don't want to hear a sermon during the safety brief. This is very recent in my memory because a match that Matt and I shot, it was just like, that dude was all over the place. Like, he started briefing the stages during the safety brief. I'm like, dude, that's what we're here to do. Like, you have the brief at every single stage. Like, I think there might as well be a bingo card given out during this safety brief. And if he hits, like, if he mentions politics, if he like rages against liberals, he starts going into like stages. If he starts being very specific about like horror stories about like other shooters have come and like shot up his range and stuff. I think that you'll get a bingo there. So that's kind of the personality of the match director is going to dictate a lot of the quality of the match. And like typically, the match director has to be an organized person. That's and somebody who puts a lot of effort into it. And then the last thing I'll say about local matches, if you're consistently going there and stomping everybody, then that's a sign that you need to branch out and go seek some heat. We've talked about it several times in all our answers. Most of us see the fact that good shooters are attending that match as a sign that that's going to be a quality match, and that's largely true. So for those of you guys that might be going to a match in your backyard and it's not very competitive, I would urge you to make the drive to something else and just see what else is out there.
No, Chris, go.
I'll just branch off of Frank's thing there. Kind of the match director's emotional stability will lead down to RO's emotional stability. And we've all seen them, a lot of guys that are very passionate about a lot of things and want to tell you their opinions on a lot of things. But if you have a whole group of match staff that is not well composed, and they will take it personally when they think that you break a rule, and then it will become a personal thing for them to prove that you broke that rule. Where I think match staff should look at the rule book and try to interpret it in any way possible to help aid the shooter. And I haven't shot one of those matches, but hearing matches on podcasts, it seems like he's taken that approach towards his matches, and that excites me. And even shooting around him a little bit, he seems like a very stable person. So I think that creates a whole good atmosphere and culture for matches.
Mike.
Yeah, I would just say that going back to what Frank said, like ROs and stuff like that. If you've got bad ones,
I think he's cutting out a little bit.
Yeah.
Mike, I think you're he's catching up.
fading.
Yeah. I think we got you again. Go ahead.
Okay, if I go to a local match and
I think we're losing him again.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll just kind of go into my last piece. Frank, I've experienced a lot of what you said, and me and Chris were kind of smiling about this a lot because we used to go to a match that was held like on a monthly or a bi-monthly period. Um and I would literally set a timer um for when the match director started talking to the point whenever he stopped. And there was one point where it was literally 45 minutes. So yeah, that's frustrating. I didn't pay to go listen to somebody talk. I paid to go shoot my guns. And I don't want my day elongated because a match director just wants to get his word in. And I think we kind of hit on things that we don't like at matches. Um, but one last thing I'll say about that, like, whenever the match director puts targets out there and he wants to try and figure out a way to where he can up the round count on there, so he just has you re-engage the same target twice, and that's steal targets. It's like now you're just, I complained before because you guys want, you down the round count. But whenever I complain, I was like, hey, you need to up the round count, make it a little bit more complex. That's what's going to make this a bit more interesting. And whenever he just, instead of making it more complex, he just has you re-engage the same steel target with pistol twice and has you re-engage the same steel target with rifle twice. Now you're just insulting me. Like, you're not doing yourself any favors. And those are things to kind of watch out for. But if you are a new competitor, or if you're even a seasoned competitor and you want to, go out and, you know, find good matches in the area, you know, typically there's one or two good matches in an area. And typically most people stick to those matches and don't go anywhere else. So those are the ones you want to hold on to, and those are the ones you want to help out. Um, a sign of a really good match is whenever you have people that consistently go back and they are asking that match director what they can do to help that match director and make it better for them or take some of the stress off for them. That's a sign of a good match and a good group of people. You have anything else?
No, I think that wraps it up. I
Okay.
also think we lost Mike. So.
Yeah. Well, we hope you did enjoy this. Let us know how we're doing. Apple, Spotify, whatever platform you do use, it, to help people find the podcast more. It does help if you go on there and rate us. So if you could give us like a 5-star review, please, that'd be great. And if there's anything you want us to talk about specifically, let us know and we will try and, get out there and do that, talk about it. But we hope you had a great Thanksgiving because we are recording this over the weekend after Thanksgiving. And just have a good one.